"You'll never be part of our weddings," my family always said. So when I got married, I invited everyone but them. Their meltdown, honestly, the best gift I could have asked for. My name's Aaron, and I'm 34 now. If you had told me 5 years ago that my wedding day would become the most profound act of quiet defiance I'd ever orchestrated, I would have dismissed it with a laugh. I was never one to cling to resentments, always striving to be the peacemaker, even when it meant personal cost. Yet, when your own family dedicates most of your life to subtly conveying your undesirability, something within you inevitably transforms. It's not an explosive outburst or a dramatic collapse. It's a gradual, chilling process, akin to an inner door silently locking, and you discard the key without even realizing it. Growing up, I was the anomaly in my family. Not a rebel, not a troublemaker, just inherently different. While my siblings, Mike and Jenna, pursued sports and popularity, I was the child who devoured books, engaged in chess matches, and yearned to discuss astrophysics and historical events at the dinner table. One might imagine that being different would simply lead to minor teasing or a bit of detachment. However, in my family, it translated into something far more insidious. Exclusion cloaked as playful banter or the dismissive "you wouldn't enjoy it anyway." It began subtly. Birthday parties where my invitation seemed to vanish without a trace. Family excursions where someone conveniently neglected to inform me. I gradually learned not to internalize it, or at least, I attempted to. Then came the weddings. Janice was first. When I was 22, she sat me down a month prior. A broad, artificial smile fixed on her face, and declared, "Aaron, I honestly believe it's better if you don't attend. It's going to be a very traditional wedding. Not really your scene." I recall staring at her, blinking, questioning if I was hallucinating. She embraced me as if bestowing a favor, promising to send photographs. I didn't go. I didn't resist. I didn't even shed a tear, though the knot in my throat made eating impossible for days. Mom and Dad brushed it aside as trivial. "She's the bride. She's entitled to her choices," Dad grumbled, barely glancing up from his newspaper. Mom added, "Besides, you would have been miserable there, surrounded by all those strangers." As if I weren't family too. As if I hadn't grown up alongside half the people on her guest list. Mike's wedding followed 2 years later. This time they didn't even bother with pretenses. I discovered it through a Facebook post, a blurred, candid snapshot of my entire family, impeccably dressed, laughing around a banquet table. The caption was something self-congratulatory like "family is everything." I sat there, gazing at the screen, my stomach churning. Not a single call, not a text, nothing, just profound silence, followed by a public declaration that I was not part of their inner circle. You'd think, after such blatant disregard, I'd be done with them, cut my losses, move on. But hope is a tenacious force. It clings to you, even when it shouldn't. I persisted. Holidays, birthdays, impromptu check-ins. Sometimes they'd respond, sometimes not. When they did, it was always with a thin veneer of politeness stretched over palpable disinterest. They'd inquire about my work, in a tone that suggested genuine indifference, or remark on the perceived quietness of my life, as if that were some inherent failing. Every visit felt like stepping onto a stage where I was performing a role no one wished to witness. The ultimate breaking point wasn't even a dramatic explosion. It was a mundane Saturday afternoon, roughly a year before my own wedding. I had driven an hour to Mike's new housewarming party, dutifully carrying a gift card and a smile, foolishly determined to keep trying. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell 3 times before Mike finally opened the door. He appeared genuinely surprised to see me. Hey, he stammered, awkwardly scratching the back of his neck. Mom said you probably wouldn't show." "I'm here," I stated, forcing a grin. "Brought you a little something." He accepted the gift card as if it were a ticking bomb. Inside, the house was packed. Laughter, music, the aroma of barbecue. I recognized faces, people I'd grown up with, but no one truly seemed to recognize me. Or perhaps they simply didn't care. I mingled for a while, attempting to engage in conversation, but it was like shouting into a void. People offered polite smiles and then reverted to their actual conversations. I felt like an outsider at my own family's gathering. The clincher came later that night. Someone, I believe it was Jenna, half drunk and slurring her words loudly across the yard, and declared, "Well, at least Aaron didn't ruin anything today. Must be a new record." The entire table erupted in laughter. I stood there, frozen, the plastic cup in my hand cracking under my grip. No one defended me. No one even appeared guilty. It was just another joke at my expense, another stark reminder that, in their eyes, I was a burden, a punchline. That was the night I decided I was done. Not with a shout, not with a scene. I simply left, slipping out the side gate while they were engrossed in their laughter. Drove home in silence, and deleted the group chat from my phone without a second thought. A year later, something truly extraordinary happened. I met Lisa. She was everything my family wasn't. Warm, kind, genuinely interested in who I was as a person. She cherished my nerdy facts, my quiet nature, my terrible puns. For the first time, I felt seen. Truly seen. When I proposed, she accepted with tears in her eyes, and we began planning the wedding almost immediately. We both agreed we wanted it to be small, intimate, close friends, chosen family, people who genuinely cared about us. As we sat one night with our guest list spread out before us, Lisa hesitated. "What about your family?" she asked gently. "Do you want to invite them?" I considered it. I truly did. I contemplated extending an olive branch about how weddings are supposed to unite people. Then I recalled the look on Jenna's face when she told me I wasn't welcome. The smug Facebook post. The drunken jokes. The years of being treated like a phantom at my own family events. "No," I said finally, my voice unwavering. "I don't." Lisa simply smiled and kissed my forehead. "Good," she said, "because I want this day to be about love, not obligation." Word inevitably spread. Of course, small towns harbor big mouths. A week after we dispatched the invitations, I received a text from Mom. "Heard you're getting married. When are you sending our invites?" No congratulations, no warmth, just an expectation, as if their inclusion was a given, regardless of how they had treated me. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "There's no invitation," I wrote simply. The explosion was immediate. Group texts erupted. Angry messages poured in from Mom, Dad, Mike, Jenna. Guilt trips, accusations, even some pathetic attempts to feign closeness, claiming they couldn't fathom missing my big day. Jenna even went so far as to post a vague passive-aggressive Facebook status. "Funny how some people forget where they come from. Hope they enjoy their little party without real family." I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't even read most of the messages. Instead, Lisa and I channeled all that energy into crafting our day, exactly as we envisioned it. Friends who cheered the loudest at our engagement, coworkers who had witnessed me at my lowest and helped me rise, neighbors who treated me like family when my own blood didn't. These were the people who would stand by us as we exchanged eternal vows. And when the day finally arrived, when I stood at the altar and watched Lisa walk toward me with the biggest, brightest smile I'd ever seen, a profound realization dawned on me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel unwanted. I felt chosen. But that wasn't even the sweetest part. The true surprise unfolded later, right after the ceremony, when someone pulled me aside with a sly grin. It was my old neighbor, Mr. Halverson, a wiry man in his 70s who somehow possessed more vitality than most people half his age. He leaned in, barely containing his smirk, and whispered, "Aaron, you're going to want to see this." Intrigued, I followed him to his small group of friends huddled around someone's phone. When they noticed me, they practically vibrated with barely disguised glee. "Look what's blowing up on Facebook," one of them said, turning the screen toward me. There, in real time, was a series of frantic, angry posts from Jenna, Mike, and the crowning touch, my own mother. Status after status complaining about my perceived selfishness, about how family demands forgiveness, about how, regardless of how someone wounds you, blood is blood, and you shouldn't turn your back. It was pure, unadulterated, public meltdown. Gold. Jenna's post was the most theatrical. "Can't believe my own brother would exclude us from his wedding after everything our family has done for him. Absolutely disgusting behavior. Some people just don't understand the meaning of family." Someone had commented underneath it, "Didn't you leave him out of your wedding?" No response. Just a flurry of defensive likes and a handful of equally petty comments from her friends attempting to support her. Mike's was even worse. "Guess Aaron forgot who helped raise him. Maybe he'll remember when he's all alone someday." Another commenter responded, "You didn't invite him to yours, right? Sounds like karma to me." Mom's post was the most pathetic of all, a blurry photograph of an old family gathering. Years ago, with a passive-aggressive caption, "Some people forget who loved them first." Loved me. I almost laughed. When had they ever truly loved me? I could feel the eyes of my friends on me, anticipating a reaction. Perhaps anger, perhaps sorrow. But I simply shook my head and smiled. Because standing there, with Lisa's hand nestled in mine, and our wedding party laughing and cheering behind us, it finally dawned on me. I owed them nothing. I was no longer a lonely, desperate child begging for a seat at their table. I had constructed my own table, my own life, my own family, and they were not welcome at it. The reception unfolded like a dream thereafter. We had leased a charming vineyard just outside of town, and the weather was impeccable, the kind of sunset you witness only once in a lifetime. Gold and pink cascading across the sky, as if painted solely for us. Lisa and I swayed under fairy lights while our friends cheered, toasted, and sang far too loudly. The cake was slightly askew. The playlist skipped intermittently, and someone inadvertently spilled a drink across the dance floor. It was perfect, yet the drama was far from over. Not by a long shot. The following morning, I awoke to my phone vibrating so intensely it toppled from the nightstand. Dozens of missed calls, voicemails, texts. Initially, I entertained the thought that perhaps, just perhaps, they had finally calmed down. Perhaps they wished to apologize, to make amends. But upon opening the first voicemail, it became unequivocally clear that was not the case. Mom's voice, taut and frigid. Aaron, you must call me back immediately. I don't know what you believe you're doing, but you will regret severing ties with your family. You'll see. No one else will ever cherish you as we do. Another, from Jenna. Congratulations on your pathetic little party. Hope it was worth it. Traitor. Mike's was the piece de resistance, a prolonged sigh followed by, you'll come crawling back one day. You always do. I remained on the edge of the bed, listening to them, one after another, while Lisa slept peacefully beside me. Every furious word, every guilt trip, every threat, it all washed over me like water. It no longer caused pain. It didn't even sting. It simply sounded pathetic. I could have replied, could have dispatched a lengthy, scathing message, could have ranted and raved, articulating precisely what I thought of them. But instead, I did the one thing they could never tolerate. I ignored them. I blocked every number, deleted every message, sealing the door permanently this time. Later that afternoon, Lisa and I sat on the back porch of our rented cabin, observing the sun descend behind the hills, sipping inexpensive champagne directly from the bottle. She rested her head against my shoulder and whispered, "Any regrets?" I pondered for a moment. "Nope," I said, squeezing her hand. "None at all, because ultimately, they were right about one thing. Family is everything. But sometimes you must choose the right one, and I had." It didn't take long for the silence to gnaw at them. For the first few days after the wedding, it was merely noise, furious voicemails, enraged Facebook posts, passive-aggressive texts sent at all hours. I disregarded them all, opting instead to immerse myself in newlywed life with Lisa. We slept late, explored quaint towns hand in hand, and chuckled over trivialities like my perpetual inability to find the hotel key and her inability to finish a cup of coffee before it cooled. It was peaceful. It was precisely what I had fought so hard to obtain. But apparently, peace was something my family couldn't tolerate. Not when they weren't in control. The first shift occurred about a week later. The tone of Mom's texts changed. Less fury, more desperation. Families should stick together. Call me. We're still your parents. We deserve to be part of your life. Consider how hurt we are, Aaron, after everything we did for you. Still no apology. Still no acknowledgement of their transgressions. Just this distorted, manipulative rendition of reality where I was the villain for finally asserting my independence. When that tactic proved ineffective, they escalated. I received an email from Dad, an actual email, which was amusing, considering the man could barely operate his phone without assistance. It was terse, blunt, and painfully transparent. "We're still your legal family. Don't assume you can erase that. No affection, no remorse. Just a reminder that, in their minds, family was not built on love or respect. It was ownership." Lisa and I initially joked about it. We even created bingo cards for their next guilt-tripping attempt. "We're your real family. You're being selfish. You'll regret this someday." It was almost comical how predictable they were, until they appeared. It was a Wednesday. Mid-morning, I was working remotely from our small living room. Lisa was in the kitchen, humming along to some cheesy 90s playlist, when there was a knock at the door. Not a normal knock either. Loud, frantic, impatient. Lisa froze, spatula suspended mid-air. Expecting someone, she inquired. I slowly shook my head. A heavy, unsettling feeling settled in my gut. I moved to the door and peered through the peephole. And indeed, there they were. Mom, Dad, Jenna, and Mike, all crammed onto the tiny porch, as if posing for some grim family portrait. Mom clutched a casserole dish like a ridiculous prop, her smile stiff and unsettling. Dad stood rigid and glowering. Beside her, Jenna wore sunglasses, as if shielding herself from me. Mike appeared bored, scrolling through his phone. I didn't open the door. Instead, I cracked the window just enough to hear them. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom called, overly bright. "We thought we'd come by and talk. You know, as a family." Her voice was saccharine, too sweet, the kind of sugary tone she used when attempting to conceal her fury. "No thanks," I stated calmly. "We're busy." A beat of silence followed. "Aaron," Dad barked, stepping closer. "Enough of this nonsense. We're not leaving until you come out here and face your family." Lisa appeared behind me, her hand slipping into mine, her face pale. "They're not going to just leave, are they?" she whispered. "No," I replied quietly. "They're not." I watched as Mom's artificial smile faltered. She set the casserole dish down on the porch railing with a loud thud and crossed her arms. "This isn't you, Aaron," she declared. "You're not this cold, this cruel." Her voice cracked just enough to make it sound like she was the true victim. Here, as if years of exclusion, mockery, and dismissal had never occurred. "You're letting her poison you against us," Jenna interjected, pulling her sunglasses down just enough to glare at Lisa. That was enough. I opened the window a little wider, met Jenna's gaze directly, and stated, "Nobody poisoned me. You did. That all on your own." The smile completely vanished from her face. Mike finally looked up from his phone, scowling. "Aaron, seriously," he said, "grow up. You're throwing away your real family over what? Some hurt feelings. Boo-hoo. Lisa tightened her grip on my hand, but I could feel her trembling slightly, not from fear, but from anger. I took a deep breath, maintaining a steady voice. You didn't want me at your weddings. You didn't want me at family holidays. You didn't want me around when it actually mattered. So now you don't get to crash into my life when it's convenient for you. You made your choice a long time ago. Now I've made mine. You'll regret this. Mom hissed. The artificial tears were gone now, replaced with raw, ugly rage. You'll regret cutting us out when you have nobody left. I smiled, a genuine, honest smile, and stated, I already have everything I need. With that, I closed the window. I didn't slam it, didn't shout, didn't create a scene, I simply shut them out. For a moment, there was stunned silence outside. Then the banging commenced, pounding against the door. Angry shouts. Lisa retreated, pulling me with her toward the kitchen. Should we call the cops? She inquired. I was about to respond when we heard it. A loud crack, as if something was breaking, and then another. They weren't just yelling anymore, they were attempting to force their way in. I didn't panic, not because I wasn't scared, believe me. My heart was pounding so intensely I could hear it in my ears, but because something within me had shifted. The part of me that used to freeze, to plead, to hope they'd change, it was gone, extinguished. I looked at Lisa, who clutched my hands so tightly her knuckles were white, and I realized this was no longer about fear. It was about ensuring they never again had the opportunity to inflict pain. Call the police, I instructed, my voice low and even. Lisa didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone and ducked behind the kitchen counter. I remained where I was, standing, firm between her and the door, even as the banging grew louder, more frantic. We're not leaving without you, Aaron, Dad roared from outside, his voice thick with rage. You're going to talk to us. Another loud bang. The door shuddered in its frame. I could hear Mom screeching, something about ungrateful little traitors, and Jenna cursing under her breath. Mike, true to form, was the loudest, yelling threats about how I'd regret this, about how no one else would tolerate me once Lisa realized what a loser I was. I didn't respond, didn't even flinch. I simply stood there, breathing slowly and steadily, until I heard the most welcome sound in the world, the distant wail of sirens. The banging ceased almost immediately. I moved to the window just in time to see Mom snatching the casserole dish off the porch, as if that would somehow save face, while Dad barked at Mike and Jenna to act normal. They dispersed, attempting to feign casual conversation, as if they hadn't been trying to breach my door mere seconds earlier. The police cruiser pulled up swiftly, tires crunching against the gravel driveway. 2 officers emerged, one male, one female, both appearing grim and utterly exhausted, as if they'd witnessed this particular suburban catastrophe countless times. I opened the door cautiously, stepping outside with my hands visible to avoid any misunderstanding. Morning, officers, I stated calmly. Thanks for coming. The female officer nodded. We received a call about a disturbance. Can you tell us what's happening? Before I could answer, Mom rushed forward, casserole dish still clutched in her hands like a ridiculous shield. Diz is our son. She gushed, all artificial tears and trembling voice. We're simply trying to speak with him. He's been brainwashed by her. She gestured a finger toward the house where Lisa was peeking from behind the curtain, and now he believes he can just disown his family. The officer blinked, unimpressed. So you were attempting to force entry into the home? No, Mom gasped. We were just he wouldn't open the door, and we needed to talk. Dad stepped up, looming as he always did when he thought intimidation would work. We have a right to see him. He's our son. The male officer sighed, pulling out a small notebook. Sir, that's not how it works. He's an adult. You have no legal right to enter his home without permission. If you continue to harass or threaten him, he can press charges. The color drained from Mom's face. Jenna began muttering under her breath. Mike actually had the audacity to roll his eyes as if he were the one being inconvenienced. I took a deep breath and stated, loud enough for all of them to hear, I wish to press charges for trespassing and attempted forced entry, and I want a restraining order. For the first time all morning, the entire porch fell completely silent. Mom's mouth dropped open. Dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. Jenna's sunglasses slipped down her nose, and Mike actually took a step back as if he couldn't comprehend what he was hearing. You don't mean that, Mom stammered. Aaron, we're family. The word family snapped something clean within me, not with anger, not with grief, just finality. I looked her directly in the eyes and said, no, we're not anymore. The officers separated us thereafter. They took statements, asked questions. Lisa eventually emerged, holding my hand. Throughout, steady and unwavering, my family persisted pleading, begging, threatening. They alternated tactics so rapidly it would have been comical if it weren't so tragic. Mom wept about losing her baby. Dad muttered about ungrateful brats. Jenna attempted to shame me, ranting about how nobody abandons their family unless they're broken inside. Mike simply sneered, as if the entire ordeal was beneath him. The officers remained unmoved. They issued a formal warning on the spot and made it unequivocally clear that if they ever appeared again, even once, they would be arrested. I filed the paperwork for the restraining order that afternoon. And just like that, with a few signatures, a few definitive lines drawn in the sand, the door slammed shut forever. The days that followed were strangely quiet, eerily so. No more furious calls, no more guilt trips, no more desperate Facebook posts. It was as if they finally grasped that they had lost whatever perceived power they held over me. I won't pretend it didn't hurt sometimes. There were moments, fleeting, insidious moments, where a part of me longed for the idea of family. I missed what could have been if they had been different people. Holidays were difficult for a while. Witnessing other families smiling together, laughing over shared memories, left a hollow ache in my chest that took time to subside. But it did subside, gradually, replaced by better people, genuine friends, chosen family, people who loved me not out of obligation, but because they genuinely desired to. People who saw me for who I was and remained. Lisa's parents, who embraced me like a second son without a moment's hesitation. My coworkers who threw us a surprise, post-honeymoon party with a cake that read, "Welcome to your real family." Neighbors who delivered casseroles and handmade cards when they learned about the restraining order, not out of pity, but out of respect for the decision to excise toxicity. Piece by piece, the life I'd always envisioned coalesced. Not the life they tried to impose upon me, not the life they abandoned me in. My life. Approximately 6 months after the wedding, Lisa and I hosted a small barbecue at our home. Just close friends, delicious food, abundant laughter. At one point, I stepped back, beer in hand, and simply observed. I watched my wife laughing with her best friend over slightly charred burgers. I watched our neighbors' children chasing each other around the yard with water guns. I watched a group of people who genuinely loved and accepted me exactly as I was. And I realized they hadn't merely missed my wedding. They had missed everything. Every positive development that followed, every milestone, every celebration, every ordinary, beautiful day, all because they couldn't be bothered to love me in the manner I deserved. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt no sadness about it. I felt free, truly, finally, completely free. And I was never going to relinquish that freedom again. Not for anything, not for anyone, and certainly not for people who only ever perceived me as something they were entitled to control. As the sun dipped low and the fireflies emerged, Lisa slipped her hand into mine and rested her head on my shoulder. "We've built a good life," she whispered. I smiled, kissed the top of her head, and whispered back, "Yeah, we really did." And this time, I knew without a doubt that no one could ever take it away from me.